And then, meron tayong, so, letter F, okay? So, hindi pwede na yung soil mo is masyadong maliit yung density. Specifically, if yung density ng soil mo is less than 800, is less than the weight or the density or the mass per cube, per volume ng tubig, kasi lilitaw yung soil mo kapag nadaanan ng tubig, so lilitaw siya sa itaas. And then soils that cannot be properly compacted, so hindi rin pwede kapag soil mo is hindi nakukompact. Ibig sabihin kahit anong meron kasing type ng soil na kahit anong compact mo, hindi talaga siya nakukompact. Okay? Maintindihan nyo yan kapag meron na rin kayong experience. Okay? So, just take it as it is. Okay? So, these are the construction requirements ng embankment. So, prior to construction of embankment, all necessary clearing and grubbing in that area shall have been performed. Okay? So, rocks, broken concrete, or other solid bulky materials shall not be placed in embankment areas where piling is to be placed or driven. Okay? So, the surface of the existing ground shall be compacted to a depth of 150 mm. The top portions of the roadbed in both cuts and fill of embankment shall consist of selected barrow for topping from excavations when planned required. Okay? Yan yung mga yung mga requirements ng embankment. Okay. So maybe okay? So one thing is kailangan mo siyang i-compact per 150 mm. So hindi dapat yung thickness mo, maglatag ka ng embankment 150 mm at a time. So hindi ka pwedeng mag-embank ng 1 metro tsaka mo pa i-compact. Hindi yon standard. Dapat 150 mm or kalahati nung ruler, ilatag mo muna, i-compact. Pagkatapos another 150 mm na embankment, i-compact mo agad. I-compact mo rin. Okay? So, yun yung ibig sabihin nito ng number 3. So, you can actually read this one. Okay? Kayo na lang magbasa. I guess this is self-explanatory. Okay? So, number 5 is road embankment of earth material shall be placed in horizontal layers not exceeding 200 mm. Okay? So, dito, existing ground. Okay? Ito, 200 mm. Okay? For roadway embankment to. So, sa sinabi ko na, palitan nyo na lang yung 150 mm ng 200 mm. So, ganun yun. Dapat 200 mm or 8 inches, layer by layer, mo tsaka i-compact until sa time na ma-attain mo yung compaction na hinahanap mo. Okay? So, embankment materials shall be compacted into a uniform density not less than 95% of maximum die density. Okay? Pinulahan ko na. Okay? Kung kung ang nanonood nito is magti-take ng materials engineer, dapat tandaan nyo itong nakapula. Okay? Kasi yung madalas yung lumalabas at the maximum. Okay? So, out of the maximum dry density determined by ASH to T99 method C. Okay? Sorry, dapat ASH to. Nabaliktad yung T at H. Okay, so yun. And then, density of compacted embankment materials shall be conducted at least once, one group of 3 in situ density test for each 500 mm squared. So, this is speaking of material testing natin. So, pag kailangan meron kang for 500 meters squared na embank mo, meron ka dapat 3 in situ density test na gagawin. Okay? For each compacted fill. Say. So, let us proceed to aggregates. Okay? So, ito tayo, si item 200. Okay? So, ito yung pinakaunang, yung pinakaunang item under ni sub-base and base course. Speaking of the Blue Book or the DPWH standards, specifications, yung pinaka-latest is year 2013. Yan. So, meron pa dyan. So, narito din yung lime stabilized at yung Portland cement stabilized road base course. Okay? Nandito din yan, yung previously na-discuss natin. So, yan. So, yeah. Okay? So, subbase is a structural layer which accepts compressive stress than the subgrade and thus reduces the deformation of pavement. Okay? Maraming insekto. Sensya na rin, umuulan dito habang nagre-record ako. So, no choice ako. Okay? So, made of economical materials with a relatively low load-bearing capacity which are placed on top of subgrade or an embankment material in order to distribute the wheel load transmitted to the subgrade. Yan. Yan yung subbase. Okay? So, ano ba yung subbase material natin? Okay, so maybe hindi ako naka-prepare ng picture nito. Okay? So, nakikita nyo naman sa daan. Yung aggregate subbase course, usually yun yung first layer ng gravel, ng mixture ng fine aggregates at coarse aggregates in a manner na applicable sa road construction. Okay, pasensya na, umuulan. Lakasan ko na yung boses ko. Okay, so maybe let's search. So, okay. So, i-search natin. Pasensya na. So, para makita natin yung picture. Ano ba yun si aggregate subbase course? Okay? Tayo natin. So, yan yung aggregate subbase course natin. So, okay. Okay, mahina yata ang signal natin ngayon Yan. Ito, okay? Yan. Yan yung ano natin, okay? Okay, pasensya na. Yan. So, para makita natin. So, ito. Ito daw. Ito yung kaibahan ni base at sa base course. Ni item 200 at item 201. Okay, pasensya na. Medyo mabagal siyang mag-open. Yan. Yan, okay. So, ito yung surface course mo. Yung surface course mo is either concrete pavement or asphalt pavement. Saka ito yung sub-base course mo. Ito yung itong nasa lupa, o ito yung nasa ilalim, ito yung subgrade mo. Okay? So, ito yung subgrade mo or ito yung top ng embankment mo. Okay? So, pwede kapag masyadong mababaw, yung original ground mo, ipapataas mo yung subgrade mo through embankment. So, pagkatapos niyan, maglagay ka ng sub-base course. Ito yung sub-base course mo. Usually, yung sub-base course mo is composed of aggregates na may halong lupa. Okay? Lalagyan mo na siya ng suitable non-granular material. So, basically, it is composed of granular materials. Sand and gravel in a certain proportion, and then meron siyang binder. Okay? Pag sinabi nating binder, yun yung lupa, yun yung non-granular soil, yung kulay brown ba siya? Okay? And then hinahalo dun sa granular soils which is sand and gravel. Okay? So, yung kaibahan ni sa base course or ni item 200 kay base course is mas maraming binder itong si sa base course kumpara kay base course or item 201. Okay? So, dito muna tayo. Yun yung kaibahan ni aggregate sa base course at saka ni base course. Okay? Dalawang layer yan usually. Sa base course, 200 and then base course, 201. Okay? Item 201. So, yan. So, material requirements. So, sub-base material shall consist of hard, durable particles or fragments, crushed slag or crushed natural gravel and filler of natural or crushed sand or other finely divided material shall be free from vegetable matter and lumps or balls of clay. So, yan yung requirements niya. So, dapat wala siyang vegetable matter. So, wala siyang mga organic matter in another term. Then, lumps or balls of clay. So, dapat wala siyang clay particle. O wala siyang portion na sticky. Na parang putik. Wala siyang putik na halo. Okay? Yan yung sub-base materials mo. And basically, it is composed of crushed natural gravel or sand. Okay? Yan. Gray sand and gravel yan. So, yun yung sinabi ko. Yan. Balik tayo sa picture. Sana yun. Sana ba yung picture? Yan. Yan. Yan sa base course. But somehow, meron siyang binder. Hindi lang itong okay. So, these are the grading requirements ng sub-base materials mo. So, ito yung SIB designation. This is according to AASH 2 T11 and T27. Okay? Tandaan nyo yan. So, in mm and then equivalent in inches. Itong si AASH 2 kasi is inches yung terms. Kinopya ni BRS, kinopya ni DPWH, iniditan lang ng konti, kaya naging DPWH BRS standards na. Kaya yan yung passing niya. So, dapat yung pinakamalaki mo na SIB na biggest size of aggregates mo is 50 mm or 2 inches. Yun yung pinakamalaki. So, makikita nyo naman. 50 inches, dapat lahat sila magpapas dyan kay 50 mm or 2 inches. Okay? So, yan yung mass percent passing niya. Okay? Ayaw na lang magbasa. So, the fraction, so, meron pa siyang additional na requirement para kay item 200 or aggregate sa base course. So, the fraction passing the 0.075 mm or number 200 SIB shall not be greater than 2/3, okay, 2/3 of the fraction passing at 0.425, number 40 SIB, okay. Yan yung additional requirement ni ASH. Okay, so meron din tayong para kay liquid limit at para kay plasticity limit, which is tested by ASH 2T89 and ASH 2T90 sa plasticity index. So, hindi ka dapat lumagpas ng 35, yung liquid limit para sa aggregates na nagpass at portion of aggregates that pass 0.425 mm or number 40 SIB. Ganon din kay plasticity index, okay, or ASH 2T90. Yan. Then yung abrasion, loss or mass percent wear is to be tested by ASH 2T96, okay? So, maybe next time, magpapakita ako ng mga videos kung paano ito gawin. Paano gawin itong mga test na to. So, the coarse portion retained on a 2 mm number 10 SIB shall be a mass percent of wear not exceeding 50. And the Los Angeles abrasion tests, okay? So, meron tayong CBR value, okay? So, yung CBR, ang ibig sabihin niyan is California bearing ratio, okay? So, maybe we will not tackle this further sa mga in this part of our lesson. So, maybe next time, yung doon tayo mag-concentrate sa testing of materials. Okay? Yung kung paano siya ginagawa. So, the material shall have soap, CBR value of not less than 25%. Okay? So, this value shall obtain at the maximum dry density as determined by, okay? Dapat, wrong spelling again, ASHTO dapat to, AASHTO T180 method D. So, this is for maximum dry density. Yan. Okay? So, we have okay, so these are the construction requirements. Okay? When spreading and compacting, yung required thickness niya is 150 mm or less. Okay? But somehow, sa 2013, okay, merong bagong department order si DPWH, pwede na itong 200 mm. Given that meron kang minimum pressure ng compaction. So, unless naabot mo yung specific na requirement na compaction effort, doon ka mag-retain kay 150 mm para safe ka. Okay? So, maglatag ka ng 150 mm, saka mo i-compact. Then, kung meron pang natira doon sa specs ni DP or kahit anong in the government agency na ginagamit, kung saan kayo nagtatayo, depende sa specification. So, usually, pwede rin 200. Pero dapat, meron ding maximum, manabot mo yung required na compaction quantity. So, this is actually, kasama, 150 is safe. Okay? So, kung 200 mm yung kapal ng sa base course mo, unahin mo muna si 150, i-compact mo, tapos, isunod mo si 50 mm. Okay? So, when the required thickness is more than 150 mm, the aggregate subbase shall be spread and compacted into 2 or more layers of approximately equal thickness. Okay. So, I may correct myself. Kapag 200 mm pala, dapat lagpas naman yun ng 150, hatiin mo yun sa dalawa or more than that na approximately equal layers. Saka mo i-compact. One layer before the other. Okay. So, yan. So, the moisture content of subbase material shall, if necessary, be adjusted prior to the compaction. Okay? So, previously, na-discuss natin na naabot yung maximum dry density at a certain moisture content. So, hindi pwede na yung lupa mo is masyadong tigang o masyadong maraming tubig. So, meron sa dapat na moisture content na kung saan na-achieve mo yung maximum compaction mo. Okay? In other words, naabot mo yung maximum dry density test. Dry density mo na kung saan mas less ang voids niya, so mas hindi pinaka-less siya na mapasukan ng tubig, kaya natin kinukumpak dahil dun para hindi magpasukan ng tubig yung base. Okay, so on curved headers and walls and places not accessible to the ruler, the subbase material shall be compacted thoroughly by approved tampers or compactors. So other than ruler, pwede rin tayong maglagay ng plate compactor. Okay? At meron din tayong tamper. So, marami yan. Okay? Merong pison or yung ruler na parang minamano-mano. Yun yung tawag na tanner type. Yung parang yung parang tura-tura yung forma niya. At meron din tayong plate compactor. So these are the compactors that is mentioned here. Okay, so the compaction of its density shall have a field density of at least 100% of the maximum dry density. So this is determined according to ASHTO T180 or method D. So before the construction is started, a trial section shall be conducted. Okay, so magka-trial section ka. So ano ba tong ibig sabihin ng trial section? Okay? So kailangan mong magpumili ng section kung saan ka mag-check kung suitable ba yung materials na nasa site. Okay? Tingnan mo yung lupa, kung yung lupa ba is malambot. Okay? Kung kailangan bang palitan yung subgrade kasi baka yung maraming maraming maputik yung soil mo, so pwede mong tanggalin yung itaas na bahagi at saka lagyan mo ng another types of soil. So speaking of that soil is non-granular soil. Hindi siya made of sand and gravel. But dapat hindi rin siya, dapat pumasya sa dun sa suitable embankment materials. Okay? So just like embankment, yung trial section mo is per 500 square meter. So this is speaking of material testing. Okay? So one trial section of about 500 square meters shall be made for every type of material and construction equipment procedure proposed for use. Okay? So that's self-explanatory na. Okay? So these are the allowable tolerances of design level. Okay? So kayo na lang magbasa niyan. Ito yung tolerances. So nag-aalaw si DPWH at si BRS ng ng mga errors. Speaking of design. Okay? So, pwedeng mag-debate ng plus minus 20. Speaking of crossfall or camber. And then, longitudinal grave over 25 mm length. So, kaya na lang magbasa niyan. Okay? So, then again. Okay? Liquid limit. Okay? So, that, yung una is, baka malito kayo, dun yun sa embankment. Ito sa, okay, sakay sa base. So, the fraction passing 0.425 shall not be greater than 25. Okay? Yung plasticity index shall not be greater than 6. And then, okay? So, actually, umabot na pala tayo kay base course. Okay? So, sana yung base course natin? Balikan natin, ha? Sa base pa pala, okay? So, ito yung 35 at 12. Okay? CBR value. So, dapat itong, okay, so, may correct myself, itong 25 at 6. Okay? Itong 25 at 6 pala class is under yan kay item 200. Item 1. Ito yung item 201 natin. Yan. Si aggregate base course. Okay? Yan. Speaking of aggregate base course, ito yung minimum requirement niya. Okay? So, it should not exceed 25 and its plasticity index not greater than 6. So, speaking of abrasion or mass percent wear, governed by ASH 2T96, okay, it shall not exceed by 50. Ang na-retain doon sa number 10 or 2 mm na laki, okay, ng ano natin, ng sieve, okay? Dapat hindi lumagpas ng 50 yung wear niya o yung okay? So, this is the CBR value. So, the material passing the 19 mm or 3/4 inch. Okay, this is the size of the sieve. Okay, so, in CBR value shall not less than 80%. So, dapat minimum siya ng 80%. Then, yung CBR value niya at MDD by ASH 2T180 method D. Okay. Dapat hindi siya bababa ng 80%. Okay. Speaking of construction requirements. Okay. So, may correct myself. This should be 201. Okay. This is 201 pala, class. Okay. So, this is yan. Dapat base course na to. Tapos na tayo sa base course. Yan. Yan yung allowable. Okay. Supposed to be base course to, class. Okay, aggregate sa base. Okay, kindly forgive me for this one. So, from this, okay, from this one, okay, so wala kasing, from this one, up to this one, dapat base course to. Okay? Yung 25 at saka 6 kay base course yan. At saka yung 35 and 12 pa is kay ano yon sa base. Okay? Yan. This is base course, hindi sa base. And then we have crushed aggregate base course. So just like item 201, ito, actually 202 din siya, oh. Yan. So either a natural or manufactured base course material where granular components are made of crushed gravel, crushed stone, or crushed rock, and much superior quality than the ordinary base course, and not less than 15% shall have at least one fracture surface. Yun yung kaibahan ni, okay? Yan yung additional na ano niya, yung tawag dyan na requirement, okay? Ni crushed aggregate base course. So dahil crushed siya, yung ginagamit dyan na base course is hindi angular or hindi rounded type of aggregates. Yung crushed, okay, yun yung kaiba ni crushed. Kasi si aggregate base course lang, so ito lang, yung item 201 is either rounded or angular aggregates yung gamit. Si crushed aggregate yung gamit sa kanya. So, this material requires a soil binder, okay? So, pag sinabi na, just like what I said, meron dapat siyang, kahit anong, yung sub-base course at saka yung base course, meron siyang binding materials na nakalagay. So, no difference itong si item 202 o si crushed aggregate base course. Mas, okay? So, to have a plasticity for proper bonding of aggregates to use for support for course of roadway. So, yung soil binder natin is yun yung non-granular materials. So, it may be a mixture of clay or so, any type of material na hindi granular. Okay? So, nang sa ganon is magdikit-dikit yung crushed aggregates mo. Okay? Kapag crushed aggregates lang kasi yung gamit mo, class, hindi siya makukompact. So, kailangan talaga lagyan mo ng konting lupa yung mixture ng sand and gravel mo. Or yung ng crushed gravel mo or crushed aggregate mo. Nang sa ganon is mag-bind yung aggregates. Okay? So, these are material requirements ng aggregate. So, shall consist of hard, durable particles or fragments of stones, crushed to the size, and shall be clean and free from vegetable matter. So, just like item 104, embankment, item 200, aggregate sa base course, and item 201, aggregate base course, ganon din, dapat walang vegetable matters, walang lumps of clay, and another unsuitable materials or these deleterious substances. Okay? So, ito yung grading requirements niya. Meron tayong dalawang uri niyan. Meron tayong grade A at meron tayong grading B. So, si grading A, nag-aalaw tayo na yung maximum size ng aggregates niya is 37.5. Kay grading B, 1 inch lang or 25 mm. Okay? See the difference. Okay? See the difference between sa base course, aggregate base course, and crushed aggregate base course. Okay? So, kay sa base course is 75 mm. Yung maximum size ng aggregates. Kay base course, 50 mm. Ito naman kay crushed aggregates, meron kang grading A at grading B na yung maximum size ng aggregates is 37.5 mm and 25 mm respectively. Okay? So, let's proceed. So, meron din siyang liquid limit, plasticity index, and abrasion or mass wear. So, just like the aggregate base course, speaking of aggregate base course, yung liquid limit niya is 25 yung maximum limit at yung plasticity index niya is 6. Okay? It should be tested by ASH2, T89, ASH2, T90 respectively. Okay? Yan. Ito yung pero may pagkakaiba siya. So, yung Los Angeles abrasion test yung ginagamit dito. And then, it shall have mass percentage of wear not exceeding 45 under 2 mm or number 10 sieve. Okay? So, speaking of CBR value or California bearing ratio, yung material na gagamitin natin is yung nagpass kay 19 mm sieve. Yung CBR value niya is at least 80%. Then, dapat yung maximum dry density niya is ma-determine by AH2 T180. Okay? Ano ba to? Nagabali-baliktad. Okay, dapat AH2 to American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. Okay? Yan. So, ito yung pag-sampling natin ng soil and soil aggregates. So, sampling is equally as important as testing. And the sampler shall be use every precaution to obtain samples which show the nature and condition of materials which they are actually represent. Okay? Sampling of potential soils and soil aggregates, sources, and types occupies a very important place in determining the availability and suitability of the largest single constituent entering the construction. So, ito yung paano pag-sample. Okay? So, marami kang tatandaan. Okay? So, kailangan mong i-judge yung suitability ng soil mo. Napapatungan mo ng aggregates. O, pati na rin yung embankment material. So, we have availability and suitability. So, it influences the type of construction from the standpoint of economics and governs the necessary material control and ensure durability of the resulting structure. Okay? Yan. So, meron tayong iba't ibang uri ng pag-sampling ng soil materials. So, meron tayong number 1 is undisturbed soil at meron din tayong disturbed soil. Okay, ano tong undisturbed soil? So, these are obtained from the field with minimum disturbance that provides clean hole before insertion to bolt tubes. Okay? Speaking of, okay? So, yan yung undisturbed soil. Okay? Kumukuha ka. Okay? So, maybe we can ask Mr. Google about that. Okay? Para mas malinawan kayo. Actually, alam ko to eh. Undisturbed soil sampling. Okay, yan. Yan yung images. Yan yung pagkuha ng sample. Yan. Ganyan. Yan yung undisturbed natin. So, pag kumuha ka ng sample, yan. Multi-purpose yan. So, hindi lang to basta-basta yung pagkuha para buhusan mo ng semento o para gawin mong daan. So, pwede rin, usually ito is para sa pagtatayo ng building. So, this is the method of undisturbed sampling. So, kukuha ka ng samples na cylindrical yung forma or pwede rin in form of cube. Meron ba dito? Parang ganito, oh. Pwede rin ito. In form of, yan. Yan, yung undisturbed sampling. Yan. Kumukuha ka ng sample, pero una, tanggalin mo muna yung mga organic materials. Yun yung, and then, approximately, siguro at least, ito medyo mababaw siya eh. Medyo mababaw. Usually, yung undisturbed sample sa actual is dito ka kukuha. Tatanggalin mo yung topsoil, and then at a considerable depth, doon ka kukuha ng sample. Okay, yan yung undisturbed sampling. Yan. So, test on undisturbed soils, ito yung ginagamit para density, yan, permeability, consolidation, triaxial, shear stress, hydrometer analysis, and specific gravity. So, yan yung iba't ibang test on undisturbed soils. So, meron din tayong disturbed soil. So, ano tong disturbed soil sampling? Marami din ito, okay? Yan. So, iba, may kaibahan. So, si undisturbed, yan. So, actually, marami, okay? So, pag sinabi kasi nating disturbed, pwede siyang so, na-alter na. So, it is a way, okay? Pasensya na. Meron akong video dati nito, na-delete ko lang accidentally. Okay? So, you can ask for Mr. Okay. So, ito pala. Yan. So, when we say disturbed soil sample, so it do not retain the in situ properties. Okay? So, parang ganito. So, yung kaibahan niya is, pwede siyang, okay, ito. Yan. Okay? So, yung undisturbed, yung disturbed soil sample mo is pwede siyang mag-granular na. So, hindi na siya buo. Di tulad ni disturbed. Ni undisturbed. Si undisturbed is ganito, no? So, makita nyo yung pagkakaiba. So, si undisturbed dito, you make sure na hindi siya mag-crumble. Yung undisturbed. Si disturbed mo, pwede siyang mag-crumble. Okay? So, yung test kay disturbed soil, okay? It is obtained through manual sampling on the point of sources or a stockpile for the use of road and other structures. Okay? Ito, easy drilling equipment yung ginamit mo with minimum disturbance. Okay? So, pwede rin yung pinakita ko sa inyo. You make sure lang na hindi masyadong na-alter yung shape ng lupa. Ito, manual sampling. Okay? So, wash and grading tests. Okay? Liquid and plastic limits test. Okay? So, just take note the tests, the difference of the test na ina-apply ni undisturbed at disturbed. Okay? Yan, kay undisturbed. Ito naman kay disturbed, yung wash and grading test, liquid limit and plasticity limit tests. Okay, yun yung usually disturbed samples yung ginagamit sa road construction madalas. Then moisture density relation or another term this is maximum dry density test, and then abrasion and field density test. Okay, abrasion test at si field density test iba to. Okay? So, next time we will discuss about this type of test and then paano siya ginagawa. Then we have California bearing ratio or CBR test. So, this disturbed sampling is usually done for road construction, at itong si undisturbed soil sampling is para to kay building. Si undisturbed soil is gagamitin mo siya sa building construction, as si disturbed soil para kay road construction. Yan yung kaibahan nila. And then additionally, yung undisturbed soil is ginagamit din siya sa mga bridges and other structures. But for road construction alone, pwede si disturb. Pwede si disturb if undisturbed is not present. Okay? So, wash and grading test, liquid limit test, moisture density relation test, or pwede ring tawaging maximum dry density test, abrasion and fill density test, and California bearing ratio test. So, this is the sampling from the stockpiles. Okay. So, design a sampling plan where a sample is to obtain from the stockpile of delivered soil aggregate material. Okay. Speaking of soil aggregate material, yun yung sand, yun yung gravel or yung crushed slag, yung item 200, item 201, matawag mo yun na soil aggregate. Okay. Then, sampling of soil aggregates in a big stockpile shall be done by taking sample from the bottom. Okay. Middle and top on of the stockpile. So, dapat kumuha ka ng sample sa ibaba, doon sa gitna, at doon sa top. Okay. So, sampling from a roadway. Okay. Sample shall be selected by a random method from construction site. Obtain at least 3 approximately equal increments selected at random from unit being sampled. Okay? And combined to form field sample whose equal or exceeds the minimum recommended size of sample. So, take all the increments from the roadway for the full depth of the material, taking care to exclude the underlying material. So, yan yung sampling from a roadway. Okay? Ganyan yung mga, mga requirements niya. Dapat random. Okay? Para hindi daya, dapat random yung sampling mo. Okay? Then, at least 3. 3 dapat. Okay? Pag sinabi mo kasing isang set ng sampling, dapat may 3 yan. 3 trials. Okay? O 3 increments. Okay? So, these are the material tests for soil aggregates. Speaking of, okay? So, meron tayong 3 tests, classification tests, routinary test, and compaction and CBR test. These are the minimum testing requirements. Okay? So, 1 quantity per 1,500 cubic meter. So, yung sample quantity natin is for classification test, 20 kilograms, 50 kilograms. For routinary and compaction and CBR is 50 kilograms. Okay. Okay. So, speaking of classification of soils and soil aggregates, so the recommended practice described at procedure of classifying soils into 7-based laboratory determination of particle size distribution, liquid limit, and plasticity index. Ito yung ASH2 designation 145, year of 1987. Okay? Particle size distribution, liquid limit, at plasticity index yung hinahanap. Okay? So, evaluation of soil within each group is made by group index. Okay? Speaking of this group index, ito yung okay? So, ito yun. Meron diyang formula. Okay? So, yung group index o yung group classification, ito yung nagdedetermine ng relative quality of soil material used in earthwork structures, particularly embankments, yung tambak, yung subgrade, okay? Yung subbase, or yung ilalim ng base mo, and then the base, okay? Just remember this picture, okay? I-review natin para hindi nyo malimutan. Yan. Okay? So, yung either concrete or asphalt pavement mo, yun yung surface course. Yung base course mo yung immediately nasa ibaba ng surface course mo. And then, sa ibaba ng base course mo, yun yung si subbase. At yung si ibaba ng subbase yung embankment. So, baliktarin natin. Yung unang kinoconstruct natin is si subgrade. Okay? Kung mataas na yung position niya, tinatanggal natin yung mga deleterious materials, yung topsoil o yung vegetable materials. Yun na yung subgrade natin. Okay? Pag natanggal na yun. Kasi nilagyan mo ng sa base course. Pagkatapos sa base course, lagyan mo ng base course. Pagkatapos ng okay, siyempre kukumpak mo to sa base course, pagkatapos makumpak, another layer which is base course. I-compact mo ulit hanggang sa makompak siya, then until ma-achieve niya yung 95% compaction, then again si surface course, or yun yung asphalted or cemented highways mo. Okay, so yan yung parts of your road pavement, ay road construction or your roadway. Okay, so please remember that one. Okay, para hindi kayo malito. Okay, so ito yung classification procedure mo. Okay, speaking of this, as to designation 14587, so prepare the test data of soil materials obtained from result of test on sieve analysis at sieve number 2, 0.425 mm, 0.0075 mm, and result of test on liquid limit and plasticity index. Then, gumamit kayo ng table classification of soils and soil aggregates. And then, the first group from the left into the test data will fit is the correct classification. All limiting teeth values are shown as whole number and in fractional number appears of the test reports. And then, meron tayong group index. And should be, okay, group index value should always be shown in parentheses after the symbol group. Okay? So, ayan yung, okay? Ayan yung, yan yung formula ni group index. So, ito yung F niya, no? So, hindi ko nabasahin. Ito yung ibig sabihin niya, okay? So, F is percentage passing 0.075 mm or number 200 sieve. And then, we have the liquid limit, yung LL, at saka yung PI mo, yun yung plasticity limit. Okay? So, when the calculated group index is negative, the group index shall be reported as 0. Okay? So, yan yung example calculations ni group index. So, assume that an A6 material has 55% passing the 0.075 mm sieve, liquid limit of 40, and plasticity index of 25. So, just plug in the value of LL, PI, and F. So, nakuha natin yung group index is 10. So kaya, yung nilalagay natin is A610. Okay? So, hanggang dyan lang tayo sa soils. Okay? So, masyado nang malayo kasi yung nabutan natin. So, the rest about soils will be on your next subject. Maybe next year, which is geotechnical engineering 1 and geotechnical engineering 2 respectively. So guys, okay? So I hope marami kayong naintindihan, and God bless us all.